into an America the Beautiful. So thank you for all of your hard work making that happen. First, I want to introduce our speaker, Matt Strickler, who I had to put some notes in here, is no longer Governor Northam's Secretary of Natural Resources, but is instead Governor Northam's Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources. I've gotten to know Matt pretty well over the last few years, since he left his important job on DC to come to Richmond to do a more important job to steward the conservation efforts of Governor Ralph Northam. We've accomplished a lot in the last couple of years under Matt's leadership, and he isn't finished yet. I know some of us are starting to think towards November and beyond. Matt is thinking about everything he needs to do between now and next year, and I know that he's going to accomplish a lot more in those next months, and who knows how many more years to come. So, Secretary.
Thanks, Mike, for those kind words. We try really hard in natural and historic resources, and that makes up for at least my lack of intelligence and competency. But I've got Josh Sachs here, Deputy Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources, who is part of the brains behind the operation and actually does a lot of the work that the governor and I get credit for. So very happy to have Josh. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today, and really to all of you, particularly the local advocates, volunteers who make this work happen, as Mike said, and who are really being relentless on behalf of protecting Virginia's environment. I remember, a couple of years ago, when we were here just up the road to Rock Planning with Congressman McEachin and Speaker Pelosi, actually, and we were talking about the importance of fighting climate change and protecting and restoring America's green infrastructure, the natural landscapes and the ecosystem components that make life on Earth possible by helping us grow food, cleaning our air and water, protecting biological diversity, shielding us from natural hazards, and providing us places of refuge to relax and recreate. And now, it's really exciting stuff. The 30 by 30 goal is a critically important one. In addition to the funding, it requires careful, science-based planning and strong partnerships with landowners and local and regional conservation groups. That is the model the President has said he wants to use to pursue 30 by 30, and that's very exciting for us because I'm proud to say that under Governor Northam, Virginia has both. The Conserve Virginia initiative has been led after being pursued by the governor by our great team, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, in consultation with a wide range of stakeholders and recently adopted by the General Assembly. These are local for land conservation and conservation. Conserve Virginia, as many of you all know, is a data-driven smart map that allows us to look at any property in our state, putting its conservation value into a number of different metrics, including forest health, soil quality, watersheds, viewsheds, wetland protection, flood resilience, wildlife habitat, and importantly, access to outdoor recreation, particularly for underserved communities. Now, Conserve Virginia continues to go through refinement. It's a living map. It's something that we want to continue to get public input on and have a lot of people involved with helping us make better and better over the course of years. But now that the General Assembly has blessed it with something that lives at DCR and will be a lasting legacy for the governor and for everybody who has participated in that. And that roadmap really informs all of the work that we're doing in spending through state agency land acquisitions, the Land Conservation Foundation grant program, and stateside LWCF expenditures, as I mentioned before. And so using Conserve Virginia as a guide, we work diligently with some exceptional allies like the Capital Region Land Conservancy to identify and protect some of the most critical conservation lands in the Commonwealth. In fact, even after setting aside lands that are important for agriculture and conservation, Conserve Virginia identifies enough high-quality natural landscapes to hit the 30 by 30 goal for the Commonwealth. We just need the public. So we can work with the willing sellers and those open to placing conservation easements on their lands to make this vision a reality. This particular property, one the Commonwealth has helped in a small way protect through the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation grant, scores high on the Conserve Virginia layers for recreational access, historic preservation, and scenic values. So just looking around us right now and walking up and down and seeing the access that is provides and how much of a beautiful oasis it is here in the city is really all you need to know to see some solid evidence to come out of the work. Since day one, Governor Northam has been fully committed to smart strategic conservation of land in Virginia. He's backed that up by securing the full $20 million appropriation for the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation. I think for the first time in history, maybe? Second time in history. By facilitating major land conservation successes like the nearly 22,000-acre large land conservation project with the Nature Conservancy in Southwest Virginia, the largest ever in Commonwealth history, and the first repatriation of tribal land in the Commonwealth, the Chickahominy tribes, Chickahominy on the farm. We've got a lot more to do in our remaining march here, as Mike mentioned, and I look forward to more exciting land conservation announcements in the near future. Now, I'd like to turn it over to a great partner in conservation, my friend, Mike.
So, a lot of you all are very familiar faces, so I'll just simply say I'm Parker Agelasto. I'm the Executive Director for the Capital Region Land Conservancy to be with you all here at Great Chippewa Park. As Secretary Strickler and as Mike Town, as both partners in this have said, we have a lot to do if we're going to ever get to 30 by 30 in Virginia. But I have a question, and I've never even prepped you for the question, but it's a good one. What percentage of Virginia is permanently protected?
16%.
Just a little bit higher than 16% because we keep doing projects every day, but you're absolutely correct. So we've got a long ways to go in Virginia.
Can you repeat the question that you asked?
Sure. So the question was, what percentage of Virginia is protected? If our goal is 30% by 2030, what's our baseline? That's the question we want to ask. And it's a good baseline. And Virginia's been active on it. For the whole state. Okay? For the whole Chesapeake Bay watershed, we're just right around 22%. For the whole watershed. And that includes Maryland, Pennsylvania. So the whole watershed is now trying to get to 30% goal as well. And I think, as the Secretary said, it's going to be very critical to identifying where those properties are. Because they're not public lands. They're private lands. And that's where we're going to have to make the investment, is in order to secure private lands and protect them with a public interest, whether that's through a conservation easement or whether that is simply through a land acquisition to make it as future parks. Now, I'm going to go through, I printed out some of my notes. I was going to talk specifically here about Dock Street, but I want to give a little bit more to 30 by 30 so that you all might have a better understanding of where is this coming from, where is it going. So, of course, 30 by 30 is something that has been around, and it was really adopted by the UN Council for Biodiversity. And they're meeting again later this fall. And some at the council, when they meet in China later this fall, want to say, well, let's get 30 by 30, but maybe we really need to be pushing for 50 by 50. I mean, there are people who want to really push the needle on this conversation. Let's not be satisfied, because we know what we have to do to accomplish the biodiversity, the health and stability of the only earth that we have to live on. So I'm going to give you a couple other statistics and see if this makes sense to you all. In the entire world, 15.6% of our land resources are permanently protected. That's everywhere. That's in developing countries, that's in already developed first world countries, and 7.6% of our oceans are protected. Our waters are falling behind our land, but the earth is water and land, and we cannot distinguish between the two when we want to protect biodiversity. Anybody want to gather a guess about how our country in itself is doing for a 30 by 30 goal? Where is our baseline for the entire United States? We know Virginia, 16%. We know the world, 15.5%.
8.
8, good guess. 13% of the land is permanently protected. So Virginia's doing a lot better than the nation's average, which we're proud about, and I think we can continue to do better than the nation's average. But what is remarkable about our waters is that 19% of our waters have permanent protection on it. When you look at a map of Hawaii, pretty much every water body around the islands of Hawaii have federal protection on it. When you go up to Alaska, the federal waters in Alaska are mostly protected. This was the big fight recently, and it shouldn't have been political. It was really why do we need protections on waters? Well, it's protections on fishing so we don't overfish. We know what had happened in the 1930s when our oysters in the Chesapeake Bay were over-harvested. We saw the whole decline in the ecosystem. And it's taken a very long time to try to build that population back. So, we know what our baseline is. And I think one of the things that Secretary Strickler has said is that it's going to take a lot of funding to get there. So, there are funding sources just about everywhere you look. The state has multiple funding avenues that can support land conservation. The federal government has multiple avenues. One of the largest that we just saw occur at the federal level is the permanent authorization and permanent full funding of the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund at $900 million annually. The Center for American Progress has this quote that to me is astonishing. Every 30 seconds, a football field worth of America's natural areas disappear to make way for roads, pipelines, or other development. Every 30 seconds, we lose a football field of land to development. Well, you know when that clock runs out. There's only so much land, and time keeps going. The time to act is now. 30 seconds is fast. Since 1979, our region, where we only look at farmland that was converted to development, our region has lost more than 24% of its farmland to development. And yet agriculture is still Virginia's #1 industry. It is the leading economic driver for our GDP. But we are seeing it cut and cut and cut by development. That's something we need to address. We're seeing now in Virginia, agriculture is the top industry. Forestry is the third. Anyone to hazard a guess as to number 2?
Tourism.
Tourism. Thank you, Leighton. Tourism. Outdoor recreation. Tourism. People are going to Virginia Beach. They're going to the mountains. They're hiking the Appalachian Trail. They're going to the Shenandoah National Park. They're visiting the Richmond National Battlefield Park. And we just read a recent economic impact study of what outdoor recreation, the economics of it from last year during the pandemic. Champ, bicycle sales.
You can't get inventory.
Bicycle sales in 1 year were up 187%. That's huge. Boat sales up like 120%. Camping gear, I mean, everything was up, up, up. That's the outdoor recreation economy. Uh-oh. Am I going on
No,
territory?
we're talking about backpack taxes, so I'm on.
Dedicated funding.
Dedicated
Yes,
funding.
I love it. And it's these conserved lands. It's that investment that's not just protecting the farm for our economy. It's not just protecting the natural areas for our biodiversity. It's protecting these places that we want to go out and recreate, that has a cumulative effect on all of our economy and our quality of life. We had Jack Berry from Richmond Region Tourism recently on a focus group that the James River Association hosted. And when we were talking about the 5 1/4 acres here, Jack Berry said, you know what, that's going to be a huge, huge driver. And it's going to be a driver for people who want to visit, but it's going to also be a driver for businesses who want to locate here because of the quality of life and the places that we have created as permanent parkland. And what's astonishing about creating permanent parkland is that all of this has been acquired piecemeal over time from private entities. Our rivers, our access to the water, our life source has been controlled by private entities. For 60 years, this was a coal yard. It's hard to imagine a coal yard here on our beloved James River. But it was the nexus of Virginia's commerce, bringing the coal in from the west on the trains and getting it onto the barges and the ships to be exported. That's what made Richmond, Richmond. That's why it developed as a capital city, was because of its intersection of the state for commercial purposes. Well, coal is a going away commodity. We don't need coal yards in downtown Richmond. And what we can do is now invert properties that were creating environmental injustices to now making them an additive to helping be a solution for environmental justice communities, which is so cool. You know, just the oxymoron aspect of it, turning it on its head. So 30 by 30 is trying to slow it down. It's trying to make investments that will support our future economy. Now, this is the challenge about the funding, and that clock that I mentioned is ticking down. And I love this quote from Aaron Heskett at Land Trust Alliance. 9 years. We have 9 years to get to 2030. Really, we have 8.5. It's not very long to protect an additional 440 million acres. 440 million acres. And to do that in 9 years in the United States. That's so aggressive. And if we're going to do it, if we're going to save what we have as our only Earth from the brink of extinction, we have to make that investment today. And we don't need to outsource the investment elsewhere. A development project comes into Richmond, they buy their credits to offset their impact. Those credits might be halfway around the world. That doesn't do a darn thing for the biodiversity or the protection or the mitigation locally for the Richmonders. Let's keep those dollars locally. Let's expand them. Let's not export our environmental mitigation to wherever it gets exported. Now I'm going to go back to another statistic, and this is, just bear with me, I'm the numbers guy, I'm sorry. That's what happens when you go to the UVA darn business school. You just become so numbers oriented. But private and public lands, I already mentioned that where we are going to get our gain is in private lands. Of all the privately owned land in the United States, 3% has been permanently protected. There's not been enough incentive. We give a tax credit that's at 40% of the value of what they are giving up of their land. How do we get them beyond that? There's ways of stacking dollars. So 40% tax credit here, getting a USDA purchase of farmland preservation here, stacking the dollars from different programs for different purposes. Now, the other thing that I think is going to be a challenge, and this is where politics at the national level are rearing their heads on the 30 by 30 campaign. It doesn't have universal support. And you know why? And it's not because there's a big R and a big D, okay? Nevada. The state of Nevada has about 80% of its land owned by the federal government. Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs, whether it's national forest land, national park land, 80% is owned by the federal government and hence considered protected. So Nevada feels like they don't have anywhere to go but this little footprint. And right now there's a land deal in Nevada where they're trying to take away from the conserved lands to make affordable housing and then add to the conserved lands elsewhere to try to offset and mitigate for the need to development close to Las Vegas. And in Virginia we're at 16%. Of course, that's such a skewed perspective. You're not going to have great agreement on where we need to be. But, and this is where you all are so fantastic, and I'm going to have to get my statistics. So, again, the Center for American Progress says, here's the quote, or the question. And it's a kind of a strongly support, somewhat support, you know how these surveys go. We should set a national goal of protecting 30% of America's lands and ocean areas by 2030. Strongly support was at 54%. Somewhat support was at 32%. We are at 86% of our nation's populace who support the goal. 86% support it. Now, time's running away and we gotta fund it. So the question then next was, do you support funding? And the number, and that's with public dollars, and the number only drops slightly. And I thought I had it on the other side here, but maybe it's in a different sheet. And I'll share, in terms of political parties, 76% of Republicans said that they support or strongly support this. It's bipartisan. This is not a question of political party. It's a question of where you live and what is protected and what isn't protected. And is there public interest in protecting more? And I think the answer in Virginia is strongly yes. So we're very fortunate in that. And this is where, as we advance the clock to America the Beautiful, and you pull my plug anytime, Mike. But has anybody read the full report that came out of the Biden administration? That's why we wanted Congressman McEachin's to kind of educate us. But this is a great one, and I will just say this is the synopsis of the report. This is why he has issued America the Beautiful, the 30 by 30 Nature Challenge. President Biden has challenged all of us as Americans to join together in pursuit of a goal conserving at least 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. The ambition of this goal reflects the urgency of the challenges we face, the need to do more to safeguard drinking water, critical for us. Clean air, critical for us. Food supplies. We saw what happened with the food chain during the beginning months of COVID. Critical for us. And wildlife upon which we all depend. And I would say that's critical for all of us. We're all part of a shared ecosystem. The need to fight climate change with the natural solutions that our forests, agricultural lands, and the ocean provide, and this is the justice part, the need to give every child in America the chance to experience the wonders of nature. That's when we make our relationship to land, is when we're children. And if I asked any of you what informs your land ethic, you'll probably go back to a childhood memory. Maybe it's something with a parent or a grandparent that usually goes back to our childhood. So, will we wrap? Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. I was going to give the whole report. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. So, basically, here we are. And this is the synopsis. And I will try to talk as loudly without yelling. Our region, where the Capital Region Land Conservancy works, has conserved less than 6% of its land area. We're less than a third of the state. That's the city, that's Henrico and Chesterfield, but it's also Goochland and Powhatan and Charles City and New Kent. These are places that have ample land. The city of Richmond is on a target to increase its public access to every resident here within a 10-minute walk of their home. And in order to accomplish that, the goal really is to get to 15% of the city's land total. And we're doing it with the project next door. We're doing it with new parks in South Richmond. We're doing it in conjunction with our schools. That's the message that I want you all to think about is, what are we doing here at home? We can say 30 by 30, and we can ask Nevada to do it all. But that doesn't help us here. What are we doing in our own area? And how can we better fund it? So with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Secretary Strickler. Try to ad-lib and fill in the gaps. So, and I got plenty of statistics to go on more.
So before we see if anybody has any questions, I know it's hot. I'm not going to speak a lot, but I just wanted to add a couple points here. Since the Congressman can't join us, he was going to talk about efforts in Washington. There's other efforts besides 30 by 30 that I wanted to highlight. One of them is the Parks, Jobs, and Equity Act in the U.S. Senate that was introduced by Senators Hickenlooper and Padilla. LCV is working to make sure that that reconciliation package includes $500 million for parks in underserved urban areas. So areas like right here. And so we're going to be fighting to make sure that that money is coming to cities throughout the country. We have a good thing going here in Richmond right now. Our mayor, our governor, our president, our delegation in Congress and here in Richmond, they're all fighting for the same things. And it's really important that we contact our elected officials, thank many of them. Congressman McEachin is a true champion, not just on paper, but he fights every day for the issues that we care about. He fights for justice. He fights for the environment. He fights for climate action. He deserves your thanks, so please thank him. On top of that, there was recent news yesterday that the American Jobs Act, the American Jobs Plan, infrastructure package, President Biden's Build Back Better package, there's a bipartisan agreement on a big piece of that. But yesterday there was an agreement on, in theory, we'll see if we're able to get it through, on the reconciliation budget piece, $3.5 billion package that would go towards a lot of it to climate action, including bringing money back to places like Virginia to finish the job, the stuff that we're getting done in Richmond and that the governor's office has been fighting for. And so this is really important, crucial climate infrastructure money. Also things like cleaning up our CSO, our combined sewer system here in Richmond. Money coming from Washington to fix the priorities that we have here in Richmond, and stuff for conservation in urban parks. So it's really important that we get Congresswoman Spanberger to join with Congressman McEachin to fight for those provisions. Senator Mark Warner was really instrumental in bringing this package together. A couple weeks ago, I met with him personally, and we were not sold on the fact he was going to be a champion. He really has leaned in hard on behalf of the environment. You may have gotten an email appeal from him yesterday talking about his work on climate change. I don't ever remember Senator Warner out there fundraising about his work on climate. This is really good for us, and we need to thank him and make sure he continues down that path. So please contact your senators, contact your congresspeople, tell them to support 30 by 30, to support the climate deal that was worked out in the Senate, and to support the Parks, Jobs, and Equity Act. So thank you. Anybody have any questions for our speakers? Okay, excellent. Why don't you do that? And I'm going to say thank you to the secretary. Thank you to Parker for joining us today.
Hello, I'm Devin. I'm an organizer in Richmond. Just wanted to let you guys know we're doing the event about rail. We have a wonderful backdrop for it right now. This coming Thursday night, it will be virtual. We've got a really great lineup. We've got the Secretary of Transportation, Shannon Valentine, Congressman Don Beyer. We've got Delegate Danica Rome, Delegate Chris Hurst, and we've got two advocates in the area, Wyatt Gordon and Danny Flogger. So a lot of really great speakers talking about expansion so that we can not just use rail for moving goods like this, but also get more passengers on the rail, which will help us lower our emissions. It's a really great option here. We've got federal funds, local state funds that we're going to talk about, and hopefully electrification eventually as well. So we have a flyer there with a QR code. So if you're interested and you want to sign up, it will be a Zoom. My colleague Bridget's been working on me with it, so we're happy to answer any questions you have. 6 p.m. next Thursday. Thank you.
All right, with that, unless there's any questions, do you have questions?
When does the campaign for 30 by 30 start?
I think it's already started.
Okay.
Yep,
So do we
this is a
get
part
all
of
the
it.
stuff from you guys?
Bridget,